plays very deep that we saw this time around? Well, let's find out with David Finnegan's Deep History at the Public Theater. He is a very engaging person as he talks about climate change in understandable terms. He's talking about his rock climbing dad that gets hit with a rock due to the melting snow, which is a first sign of climate change. Also, his friend, who has a wife and 3 kids, is in the thick of this raging fire that is overtaking a large section of Australia. Think California and Canada, but even worse. How he wrote this play in 72 hours over what was happening in Australia with this terrible fire that was destroying animals, trees, and people's lives. He is a consultant with the World Bank on climate and disaster relief. He works in collaboration with climate and earth scientists, so he knows his onions. Apparently, we are already living in the early stages of climate change, and it is never going to leave. We're just going to go through stages. And I just thought this was so interesting and engaging and like, wow. And for the first, he should do TED Talks all over the world because it'll make you really understand climate change brilliantly.
Deep History is written and performed by David Finnegan and directed by Annette Mees. You know, he had this play is fabulous. It's like a lecture, but it has a lot of drama in it and art also. And he has a lot of knowledge. He learned from his father, who was who is still alive, hopefully, climate scientist father, who was a mountaineer, and he had a very bad accident. And then this son was very, very involved. He thinks it takes place in Sydney, Australia. He believes it's the fault of the human beings because they have never taken care of the climate change, the carbon emissions, and all the global warming. But it's also because of the lack of knowledge of the science. And since his father was the scientist, his interest was really, really increased. And he had the deep knowledge. It's the deep knowledge of lots of things. Then he used a fascinating technique of stream of sugar to represent the population, which keeps increasing and increasing and increasing. And then the fires happening all over the place. And it is because of the earth is falling apart, because earth is so dried up, the rivers are drying up and is cracking, and human beings are not really helping. But this lecture was just so informative. He shows us incredible slides, and I have never known so many things which I learned from this play. And he's a wonderful performer, and only he can do it, because otherwise it'll be a very bad kind of a lecture. I loved it, and happy face.
Happy face for me too.
Mint Theater Company is presenting Something Like Wings, written by Lynn Riggs and directed by Rael Myrick Hodges. And this is actually a premiere in New York of the 1925 play. It centers on Willie, a restless teenage girl in a small Oklahoma town from 1913 to 1916. Her mother, Mary Baker, runs the dining room in a respectful local hotel. To protect her daughter from boys, Mrs. Baker frequently locks her daughter up. Willie bangs furiously on the door, yearning to fly away. Another rebellious young woman, L.V. Rapp, who freed all the prisoners from the local jail, works briefly at the hotel. Mary's brother, Uncle Jim Thompson, deals with the rooms in the hotel. He urges Mary to be less strict with Willie. He and the young woman have a deeply sympathetic relationship. A young married hotel resident, Boy Huntington, urges Willie to go away with him. Eventually she does, but returns later to her hometown with more life experience. Birth and death occur, and Willie still yearns for freedom, however confusing it may be. I thought Julia Brothers was wonderful as the prim, well-meaning, misguided mom. Richard Lear is refreshing as the kindly, understanding uncle. Mariah Lee conveys the confusion and complex emotional turmoil of the young woman who wants to experience her wings. I had trouble with Luke Klein as boy. They, his preferred pronoun, seemed too young and appeared to grow younger as the years went on. they also seem too effete and effeminate to be a rustic Romeo. The set and costumes are rather drab, but appropriate for the time and place. Some colorful relief was provided by the purple lit background where passers-by walked on the street behind the hotel. This was an interesting play, well mounted by the men, but far from one of my favorites of their discoveries of neglected works. I gave it a happy face minus.
Agree with you about the happy face minus. I don't know. It didn't grab me. I mean, yeah, it's the clash of the mom and the daughter, and Lynn Riggs, who wrote this, wrote Oklahoma, which was so much better.
Well, he wrote Green Grow the Lilacs, which was turned into Oklahoma.
But basically, he's about these simple characters. Just nothing majorly happens. I mean, Oklahoma, she falls in love. She wants the bad boy or the good boy. She has a dream about it. So he can write like simple stories and make them more interesting. But this one was just like the way I just found it kind of meh. It didn't grab me like other Mint productions did. But still, I'm very glad I got to see it because I wouldn't see these if it weren't for the Mint. So the Mint Theater is just so important for American theater goers. It really is. So I'm giving it a happy face minus two, but I'm looking forward to their next production.
So am I. I love the Mint.
At Ensemble Studio Theater is Lloyd Suh's Franklinland, which shows Ben Franklin to be a demanding and dismissive dad. At first, Ben Franklin's bastard son, William Franklin, wants to be like his dad and hangs on his every word and slavishly does his father's bidding. Ben takes him to Philadelphia, the Atlantic Ocean, London in pursuit of his scientific experiments. Most of all, Benjamin wants to buy a tract of land in Nova Scotia and turn it into Franklinland, where all the great minds can congregate and create monumental ideas. But how long can William take his father's emotional abuse of constant put downs before rising on his own, and what does that get him in the end? Thomas J. Ryan is hysterical as the vainglorious Franklin, who is very full of himself. Mason Reeves is touching as a son who wants his dad to just be proud of him just once. And Noah Keynesian makes a surprise appearance at the end, who still has his innocent charm as he navigates between two stubborn men. I thoroughly enjoyed this, and the set is incredible, and I'm giving this a happy face. And Sasha Clark's review will be on Facebook.
I saw our class a while back when it was at BAM, but it's written by Tadeusz Slobodzayanek. I'm not sure how that's pronounced. Adapted by Norman Allen and directed by Igor Goliak, and it concerns the entrapment in a barn and burning alive of almost the entire Jewish population of a Polish village in 1941. It's clear that this pogrom was enthusiastically supported and perpetrated by the non-Jewish Catholic townfolk, while later the villagers maintained that the massacres was a Nazi act of war. It's clear to the Polish perpetrators that this wasn't the case. After the killing, the townsfolk benefited by taking over the homes and possessions of the murdered Jews. You have to question how humans can do such horrible things to other humans, and how can the guilty live with themselves? It was presented as, this group of students who were both Jewish and non-Jewish before this event, and chronicles what happens to each of them as the years go on, and the class becomes kind of fragmented through the specter of extreme anti-Semitism and this horrible event. I was really taken with this. I thought it was extraordinarily good, and I gave it a major happy face.
and now it's moved to the CSC Theater on 13th Street with the same cast, and it's still good. And they got since Mark, you mentioned the author and the director, but you didn't mention the cast. A wonderful group of actors that I wanted to mention them: Gus Burney, Andre Burkovsky, Jose Espinosa, Tess Goldwyn, Will Manning, Stephen Oshner, Ilya Volek, Ilan Safir, and the wonderful Alexandra Zilber and Richard Topol, who kind of almost, if in an ensemble cast you can have leads, they were kind of the leads for me. And I just think it was an extraordinary group of actors in a really wonderful play that was worth bringing back.
I just want to say what our class is basically non-Jews and Jews in a class together, you know, from when they were little to when they were older, and they grew up together, they love each other, they know each other. They're you know, a small town, and they grew up together, and there was no religious problems or anything until the Nazi propaganda came in and turned everybody against each other. And it just shows how insidious it can be, where you take these people, these pure innocent people that care about each other, and make them hate each other for stupid reasons. And it was just brilliantly done. And I saw it at BAM, and I'm just glad they brought it back. But you only got it this weekend to see it again. So hopefully they'll keep on bringing it back, and maybe it'll even make it to Broadway because it's of that caliber. Happy face. I am so excited to have Jenny Lynn Bader on our show, who I didn't realize I have known since 2012 when she did New George's None of the Above. And I'm so excited because she's got a show going on right now at 5090 East 59th Street called
It's called Mrs. Stern Wanders the Prussian State Library. It is the little-known story of the arrest of the thinker Hannah Arendt, arguably the most influential political thinker of the 20th century, in 1933 Berlin. And I read what she said about it in an interview, and I kind of gasped. And I said, well, there's your play. And then I wrote the first, scene that I wrote of this play, which was only two characters, just the policeman and Hannah. And then the night before the reading at the Anne Frank Center, the actress dropped out because she got cast in a movie or something. And so I ended up playing the role at the Anne Frank Center. And people came up to me and said, oh my God, this is so great. You should expand this into a full-length play. How much of it is done? Is this, obviously this is just an excerpt, the rest of the play. And I didn't know because I hadn't seen it. So I didn't yet know what the rest of the play was. And then I started being invited to perform it around town, this one scene with me and the guy. And I still hadn't figured out how to expand the play. And then one time I was invited to the Museum of Jewish Heritage for an event they were doing. And they said, can you do this date? And I said, well, I'm going to be out. You can license the piece. I'm going to be out of town on that date. And they said, oh, that's great. None of the playwrights are performing in their work in this festival anyway. Don't worry about being in it or directing it or whatever. And so I left town, and it was scheduled and it was going to happen without me. I went to one Zoom rehearsal, and then suddenly, as if it were sort of ordained, there was a blizzard that postponed the entire festival. And I came back and I watched the two characters and I went, ding, ding, ding. There's a third character in this play. And I know how it becomes a full length. And this is not just an excerpt, and this is not just a scene. This is a full length play. And then I also discovered, because this wasn't really known widely, I discovered that she wasn't just imprisoned, for one day. She was detained for 8 days. And that also gave me ways of turning it into a longer play. So the dynamic between the three characters and the chronology, and it all kind of came together.
Wow. And of course, I mean, when you did all this, this was long before the whole hostage and the war and everything. So it probably takes on even more meaning even now.
Yes. Well, when we premiered the play in New Jersey in 2019, the full-length version. And there was also a reading of it at Urban Stages right before that. And then it was done at Luna. And then there was a lot of interest. There was a talk that, we were offered a run, a transfer to another a performing arts center in New Jersey. And there was someone trying to bring it into New York. And there was potential interest in Germany. And there was a lot happening around it, which was all, canceled by pandemic. And at the time, we thought, oh, too bad this is all being postponed, because every reviewer, every audience member is saying this play is so timely with the rise of anti-Semitism, the worldwide threat to democracy, the spread of totalitarian regimes, internationally, and the increasing political polarization of the populace and our increasing inability to speak with one another across ideological divides, that this play speaks to all these things. And it just couldn't get timelier. And now, 5 years later, it sadly has gotten a lot timelier. I mean, who knew?
I know, it's kind of shocking that something you wrote 5 years ago, and still nothing's been resolved.
Yeah. Well, yeah, Hannah Arendt was an amazing, amazing thinker. You don't need to know anything about her to see the play. If you do know about her, there's some little extra, fun bits, but you don't have to know about her. But one thing that's amazing about her is just how much of everything that's happening to us at all times, she predicted, she wrote about. So, one thing I discovered in the course of writing the play is that I don't just have to, just because she's 26 when the play happens, that doesn't mean she's not already developing some of the ideas she has later. So I felt like her whole oeuvre, everything she'd ever said, done, interviewed about, all of her theories, all of her writing was all kind of a playground for me to do research in.
I know, and she's one of those Jewish cultural icons that, everyone knows Hannah Arendt, like they know Sandy Koufax and Anne Frank. But it's so nice because you're bringing us something about her that we don't know. Because we know all about Hannah Arendt, but it turns out there's always something to find out. There's always something you don't know about somebody.
Well, we most people have heard of the older Hannah Arendt. They don't know what she was like when she was young, or the the things she was involved with then. So it's an exciting period to explore.
I saw an earlier version of Donald Stephen Olson's The Christine Jorgensen Show at 59th Street, and it's back, which I'm very happy about because it's so damn good. What it does is it shows shy Christine Jorgensen, played by Jesse James Keitel, who is sent to Miles Bell, played by Mark Nadler, a washed-up song and dance man, to help her to put together an act. For those who don't know, Christine Jorgensen was the first person to have a sex change operation in Denmark back in 1953, going from an ex-GI to an elegant, refined lady. Because of the novelty of the situation to most of the world, she became an instant celebrity. Her agent wanted to cash in on this novelty, but she can't sing, dance, or tell jokes. After a rocky start, Miles agrees to try and shape her into an act. There are many clashes from these strong-willed people who know what is best for themselves, but not for each other. Can Miles turn this gawky, reluctant woman into a swan, much like My Fair Lady? Mark Nadler, as Miles Bell, can play the piano like nobody else. He's got that perfect blend of exasperation and admiration as he tries to coax her out of her shell and her fixed ideas of what she is capable of. Jesse James Keitel is stunning and just exudes that classic 50s air of a pearl-wearing conservative woman. Yet she has that steely determination of what is good for her, but the weight of the paparazzi chasing is wearing her down. Christine Jorgensen was quite remarkable to realize that she had the wrong body at birth and did something about it. This was unheard of back then. Jesse James Keitel captures this brilliantly. They both had something to prove. Will they be able to achieve what they both need? This is such a fascinating time capsule to go back and revisit, considering what is going on in today's time. And I give this a major Happy Face Plus.
I wasn't as happy with it as you were, Eva. I wanted more. I wanted to learn a little more about Christine Jorgensen, who, though I knew she was the first transgender celebrity of her time, kind of the first reality star, so to speak, in her time, I didn't feel I learned very much. And I wanted more. I did enjoy the performance. Mark Nadler is very good, and Jesse James Keitel is really wonderful as Christine Jorgensen. I think I learned more about about Christine Jorgensen from doing a deep dive on Wikipedia, trying to fill in what I missed, but find out more about her than I did from the play, where I found I didn't really get anything from it.
Oh, see, I found it very informative talking. I found out about being XGI. And also don't forget, Bradford Lurk did the whole Christine Jorgensen a long time ago, which if you want to know about Christine Jorgensen, there's that. It was good that way, and that it showed taking someone with no talent and turning them into something. I mean, that
I,
was the point of this play.
I did find the performances, especially Jesse James Keitel as Christine Jorgensen, to be wonderful, and so it's a mixed space for me.
Manhattan Theater Club at New York City Center, Stage 1, is presenting Vladimir, written by Erica Sheffer and directed by Daniel Sullivan. Raya Bobrinskaya is a brave and determined opposition reporter in Putin's Russia in 2004. She's gone repeatedly to officially off-limits Chechnya and humanizes the people there in her anti-war reporting. For this, her life is very much in danger. Her former husband and boss at the opposition paper, Kostya, is far less brave and far less focused on taking a constantly oppositional stance. He will even work with his old chum, Andrei, who heads the official state TV station. Raya also wishes to find out more about a 20 million ruble bogus tax refund. She enlists the help of Yevgeny, a Jewish accountant originally from Ukraine, who at first is very fearful to help her in this investigation. Also important to the play is the tender relationship between Raya and her and Kostya's daughter Galina, who is soon to get married. The theme of the difficulty and dangers of fighting against complacency under authoritarian rule is very interesting and quite topical, with the likely imminent possibility of Trump winning his bid for re-election. I had trouble with the performer's use of Russian accents when speaking with Americans. It seemed like a gimmicky choice to me. I was also less than thrilled with Raya's imagined conversations with a young Chechen woman whom she met briefly in Chechnya. Raya is incredibly bold and thoughtful character. When Chechen terrorists are responsible for the mass killing of school children on the first day of the school year, Raya, who by no means condones the slaughter, is able to see the complexity of the situation. I found Vladimir to be a gripping and intelligent but somewhat flawed play. I give it a happy face minus.
I found it to be rather confusing. I was very distracted by what is the relationship between Kostya and Raya. And so that kind of distracted me. And I mean, and also you keep thinking about the war in Ukraine and Putin being a dictator. I mean, it really is a very timely play right now. And I mean, you've got wonderful actors. I mean, Norbert Leo Butz as Kostya and Francesca Faradani as Raya, and Eric Jensen as Andre, and David Rosenberg as Yevgeny, and there were other people too. But it just shows like the really the political climate of being with this horrible dictator who's basically destroying his country, destroying his own people, and it was very gripping and good, but at the same time confusing. So I'm giving it a happy face -2. Martha Pichet's Ashes and Ink is about coping with grief, addiction, and other life-altering changes. Molly's dealing with the sudden death of her husband, her son Quinn, who is an addict and just ran away from his rehab, and trying to digitize her business of making bird sounds that she is planning on selling. Her sister Bree was helping her out but has issues of her own that she has to deal with. On the bright side, Molly is seeing another widower, Leo, who lost his wife a few years ago and is a single dad to his young son Felix, who idolizes Quinn and loves Molly. Quinn wants to be an actor. He's studying 3 monologues and hopes to go to London and study at RADA. But can he overcome his addiction? Will Molly ever be free of the fear of whether her son will eventually die from this addiction and his bad choices? Can she keep up a relationship with Leo over her constant worry? This is a very troubling play, beautifully acted by everyone, especially Catherine Irby, who I just adore, and Julian Shaftkin is a great new actor. And Tim McMath has created a clever set on that small stage. The play is flawed in spots because at one point Quinn steals something from his mom's purse, but we don't know what it is, and why doesn't the mom ever notice that it is missing? But other than stuff like that, it really keeps your interest. So I'm giving it a happy face minus. Boy, is November busy, and our next show is November 19th. Closing November 2nd is Honeyland at the Triad, Feejee Mermaid at the Fleet, and Permafrost Theater Collective's Pose Children at Under St. Mark's Place. Closing November 3rd is That Parenting Musical, Manhattan Repertory Theater's Raw Shock at the Chain Theater, Dark Ladies, Ghostly Tales by Gothic Ladies at the Players Theater, and Guac at the Public. Closing November 9th is Blue Hill Troupe's Cinderella, Roger Hammerstein's Cinderella at the theater at St. Jean's. Ars Nova's The Bestiarity at Greenwich House. The Spirit Speakeasy that Lisa and I just loved is closing at Sincerely Ophelia. And at the Japan Society is Shanae Meets Puppetry from November 7th to the 9th. Closing November 10th, as we mentioned, Mrs. Stern wanders the Prussian State Library at 5090's 59th Street Theaters. The Post-Poetic Machine, Maeve Izaguirre's visionary exploration of human-machine synergy exhibition on view November 4th through 10th at Theater Lab. That's a mouthful. Fatherland at City Center 2 and Ragtime from Encores at City Center. Closing November 17th is Irish Art Center's Malaprop Hot House. The 2024 La Mama Puppet Festival is going on. Katerina and the Beauty of Killing Fascists at Banff from November 13th through 17th. In the Amazon warehouse parking lot at Playwrights Horizon, Regeneration Theater and Combustion Collective Skyscraper at Urban Stages November 7th through 17th, and Roundabout Theaters The Counter all closing November 17th. Now for the special event, we've got Oscar Hammerstein Award from the York Company Theater, which is honoring Bernadette Peters and Ted Snowden on November 11th at the Edison Ballroom, and Michael Urie is hosting. So everyone have a wonderful November.